All right, friends, the time has come for our group photo, and so I'm going to ask you to make your way between the top hanging screens on either side. And those of you in the, or you can come down here and fill in the spot between the middle and the ramp where Lisa Falkinson's from her right to the, spilling forward a little bit. Perfect, stop there maybe. Go, stop. To all our friends on that side of the room, if you can move your way over into the crowd. Yeah, no, Alan said you guys can you can fill in between, no, not you guys, where Bishop Susan is, and yep, you guys can fill, and Marilyn, you guys can fill in a little bit. Great. Super. And if you are on that side of the screen, you have to move in. If you're on that side of that screen, you have to move in. Yeah. I'm going to sit on the floor next to Noelle. No, I'm kidding. All right, how's it looking, Alan? Good? All right, I'm going to turn it over to the comms team to tell you when they're ready to take the picture, because I think you guys are in good position.
Okay, Alan is testing the light, so stand by. This is so Calgary. We look like a herd of buffalo. We're ready? All right, we're ready. Let's do it. Go ahead, Alan.
Okay, everybody. 1, 2, 3, smile. We'll do that again.
Doing.
PJ, turn. Okay, here I am. Wait.
Shake a leg.
Iran, moderator, and those folks can come up a bit.
Okay, let's come up a little bit.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I am ready.
It's okay, Noelle.
Okay, folks. Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. I do one more. 1, 2, 3, smile. We have so much fun. Let's keep standing. No, we have to thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Oops.
All right, friends, as you're moving to your tables, I'm going to be super efficient and give you some information as you're moving to your tables. Maybe, if people will listen to me. Whoa, hello. All right, friends, as we're getting ready to move into the next agenda, you may remember way back to June 22nd, you passed a procedural motion that said that a person named Tyler Lodge would be our recording secretary for the General Council. And many people have asked, who is this silent mystery man sitting next to me in the General Secretary? This is Tyler Lodge. So Tyler works in the Office of the Moderator and General Secretary, and his official title is Executive Governance Admin Support. So that's who he is, and that's why he's here, and we love and appreciate him so much. So I will turn the meeting over to the General Secretary to introduce the staff who will offer the report on Indigenous Ministries and Justice. Yeah, no, you're doing a report yourself now, didn't you know?
Thank you, moderator. We have two staff members from the Indigenous Ministry and Justice staff team who will be presenting to us the report of the Indigenous Ministries. I'm going to get into trouble because she's taught me how to say her last name. So Springwater, Hester Mewasigan serves as the team lead for Indigenous Ministries and Justice, and Tony Snow, who has just joined the staff on a part-time basis, works along in terms of helping to support the outreach to the various communities. So, moderator, I'm inviting them to share the Indigenous Ministry and Justice report.
Thank you, General Secretary. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Michael said, my name is Springwater Hester Mewasige, and I'm the team lead for Indigenous Ministries and Justice. And my mother comes from Serpent River First Nation. My father is a member of Waskaganish First Nation in James Bay, Quebec. My colleague Lori Ransom, who oversees the governance piece with Indigenous Ministries and Justice, cannot be here today. The Indigenous Ministries and Justice team is made up of myself, Tony Snow, Lori Ransom, Anusha Aggie, Ray Anderson, Charlene Burns, Sarah Stratton, Joni Shawana, Tim Hackburn, who's in the Indigenous Office of Vocations, and William Miller. We're very grateful and appreciative of our colleagues, and we're also especially grateful for the National Indigenous Elders Council. So I'm going to be speaking to the work that has been happening over the last little while in Indigenous Ministries and Justice. I know many of you are curious, wondering what we've been up to, and it's my hope that you'll have a better understanding of what's been going on. So the Indigenous Church has been on a journey that has been full of incredible moments of growth, renewal, and challenges. Our journey has been full of a deep and profound commitment to who we are as Indigenous people within the United Church of Canada. Through this time of growth and renewal, the elders of the Indigenous Church have journeyed alongside the staff of IMJ so that we can continue serving our communities and determine a path forward. So when I start to discuss some of the key areas of work that what we've been doing, it's not going to be in any kind of order, and you'll notice that it's going to be in the seasons. So we have winter, which is a time of rest and renewal; spring, time of renewal; summer, time of abundance; fall, time of harvest and reflection. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So because Lori's not here, I will only briefly speak to some of the governance pieces. So in 2024, the NISG called for a time to heal and reflect, giving assurance of support from the elders. The NIEC assumed leadership of the Indigenous Church on an interim basis. Recently, a minister's retreat was held in October of 2024. The retreat provided much-needed respite for United Church ministers who are serving Kuwaitan as they face extremely challenging times. The number of deaths in northern communities is staggering, and far too often, northern communities lack the necessary resources to support a community. The United Church ministers are called upon to support the community members in many different ways. They are very resilient, but their work is exhausting. The retreat provided rest, training in crisis management, and spiritual renewal. It provided the ministers with the opportunity to take care of themselves, share mutual encouragement, and return home with their spirits in a better position to continue serving their communities. The Community Capacity Development Coordinator for Keewatin, Ray Anderson, has been working collaboratively with Glenn Waterman, the annual giving lead, to provide pastoral care for Keewatin ministers annually. 3 new elders have been called to the NIEC. The NIEC and working group they're working on a plan to come together in September 2025 to dream and vision for a path going forward. The 3 community capacity development coordinators visit and work with Indigenous communities of faith and ministry leaders to support ministry and outreach. They are responsible for supporting the priorities named by the Indigenous communities of faith in the development and implementation of work plans that lead toward a sustainable and vibrant ministry. Youth leadership development, stewardship, real property, financial and economic prosperity, education, traditional knowledge and spirituality, pastoral care, and healing models. We are working with one of the things I also wanted to name was that we are working with the General Council Office to develop a process on returning land back to communities who are requesting it. We're trying to make it as low barrier as possible, and we're trying to make sure that it's done quickly. We don't want to drag it out for years and years and years. So the Community Capacity Development Coordinators have been working collaboratively to establish a property and capital plan that addresses repairs, contracts, negotiations, upgrades, and restoration of church buildings and manses. These plans will ensure an accurate record of all property holdings and property transactions are maintained, and that properties are adequately insured. These plans will provide the Indigenous Church with accurate and up-to-date information as to what types of supports are needed for our communities. The Community Capacity Development Coordinators have identified many clergy vacancies in all of the circles of the Indigenous Church. The Indigenous Church will need to work collaboratively to develop effective strategies to serve the ministry needs of these communities. So William Miller, who's sitting over here, was recently brought on, and he is working to provide opportunities for Indigenous young people. Some of the programs that exist within IMJ is Nietzsche, the Indigenous Racialized Youth Retreat, and many others. So right now I'm going to, The Indigenous Church has been in a process of doing property assessments, and we have done 40 thus far. And those property assessments have been financed by the Indigenous Church Reserve. And we'll be pulling up another slide later to show you what some of the realities are. The Indigenous Justice and Reconciliation animator Sarah Stratton supports the Bringing the Children Home initiative to assist Indigenous communities in honoring missing children and identifying unmarked burial sites. To date, we have provided financial support for 3 commemorative projects and provided digital packages of archive material to 24 communities. This represents more than 75,000 pages of documentation and thousands of images. Sarah has presented webinars, workshops, and sermons on the reports of the Special Interlocutor on Missing Children and Unmarked Burial Sites to our governance structures, communities of faith, and broader communities, and is engaged in ecumenical dialogue on further animating the report and taking action on settler denialism. She has recently organized an ecumenical public event with TRC Commissioner Marie Wilson and journalist Cynthia Reyes. Lori Ransom has recently completed a piece of work on addressing spiritual violence, and she's currently working with the communications department to begin narrating that work. And she's working with United and Learning staff on an animation plan. A number of ordinations over the past 3 years of Indigenous ministry personnel, and we have a number of candidates going through the candidacy process with the Office of Vocations through the Indigenous Candidacy Board. I'm just going to touch base a little bit on some of the work that has been going on through the Healing Fund. So the Healing Program Coordinator supports Indigenous community development initiatives across Canada through offering various grants related to holistic healing, leadership development, and education, faithfully pursuing healing, cultural revitalization, and truth and reconciliation. The coordinator engages all Indigenous communities of faith, and the Church in a relational manner that follows the sacred teachings of respect, love, bravery, humility, wisdom, honesty, and truth in all aspects of community involvement. Management of the Healing Fund, the Dorothy Jenkins Fund, the Indigenous Endowment Fund, and the Alvin Dixon Memorial Bursary Fund are critical pieces for the Healing Fund coordinator, and this is done in collaboration with the task group. The Healing Fund and the United Church Women formed an exciting relationship in 2022 to support healing for Indigenous women, children, and families. The UCW has committed to the financial relationship for 5 years. The total received effective August 2025 is approximately $44,000, and that allowed for 2 additional Healing Fund initiatives to happen. The Healing Fund coordinator, Joni, was invited to the Healing Fund initiatives that the UCW supported at their national meeting in September. She has been invited to present at a UCC congregation in early summer 2025. A UCW handout on how to give to the Healing Fund is in the works and will include a summary on each initiative that the UCW has supported. So the GCO relationships, they have been key to managing this period of transition that the United Church has been going through and experiencing. We've been developing relationships with our philanthropy. Finance has been really supportive. UCW and Church and Mission, all the various different departments and units have been supporting Indigenous ministries and working alongside us. You can go to the next slide.
Lagun Chawa Mintown Chestabi. I am Reverend Tony Snow from the Stoney Nakoda First Nation west of Calgary. I am the IMJ coordinator, helping with the work of the church. So what I've been doing in the past few months is to review a lot of the documentation, a lot of the information, a lot of the status and upkeep of the various communities of faith that fall under the Indigenous Church. Part of that work is a reminder that there has been historic underfunding, lack of staffing, lack of support, lack of ongoing investment in the various communities. What we are finding is that there's not a lot of good record keeping been going on, and that has been a hindrance to bring us up to the same space that the Project 2035 information has been presenting. And so it's an uphill, and we know that the Indigenous Church is working to fill in those gaps, but it's also a systemic problem. It's also part of the understanding that we bring to this space here in front of the National Church. Today we did the extinguishment of the sacred fire. We didn't have a representative from the United Church there. And it's important that we remember that the efforts of the Indigenous community have been put forward for generations with goodwill at hand to understand how we are building relationship together, how we understand that relationship. The sacred fire and the ashes that come from the sacred fire are a medicine. We are creating a medicine for people with the goodwill of the community. The elder who did the closing prayer noted that in Morley, the apology has never been heard by the community. He noted that there are certain gaps that exist in our relationship, and that the United Church needs to take steps to be part of that relationship. Earlier this week, I was at the Anglican Sacred Fire meeting. They're dealing with very much the same issues as we are. And part of that, it seems, always falls to the Indigenous Church to respond to. And a lot of the work that we have done since the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, the TRC calls to action, the incorporation of UNDRIP into our policies, have given us a framework to work with. The work has been done. We need to step into that in a meaningful way. And that means that each one of us are part of this journey. It's not merely for the Indigenous Church to walk through. It's not merely for the Indigenous Church to decide upon, but that we must be able to call on our partners in community, our partners across this nation, to help and support what ministry means, especially in light of some of the challenges that First Nations are dealing with. Rampant unemployment, discrimination, the loss of lives of elders and young people across the nation. These are concerns, as well as the concerns about missing and murdered women. These are all part of the daily life of the community. We don't see that in our metrics. We don't see that in our calculations. These are issues that we must work on together, collectively. So I brought some of the ashes from the fire, which is our medicine, to give to Springwater here and thank her for her work. And I think that's what I wanted to stop talking on. I'm at 4:14.
So I'm going to invite the General Secretary to finish this reporting time.
Moderator, there has been a question raised about the funding to the Indigenous Church through Indigenous ministries. At the time the question was asked, we did not have all the numbers available, and so I'm going to ask my colleague Harry Lee, who serves as the executive officer for finance, to clarify the question as to the funding of the Indigenous ministries, also in comparison to how regional councils are funded by the General Council as well.
Thank you, General Secretary and Harry.
Thank you, General Secretary. Hello, everyone. I think the question was forwarded to me is to offer a summary of the funding to the Regional Council office and a brief summary of the funding to the Indigenous Church. So, as I mentioned yesterday in the assessment conversation, annually there are 2 revenue streams to the Regional Council office. One of them is the mission service grant, and the other one is the assessment allocation. The total of those 2 funding streams to each region is between the range of 500,000 to 600,000 per year. And the total amount is the same across the 16 regions. For the indigenous church, the total funding, I just looked it up, for the fiscal year of 2024, the consolidated budget supporting the indigenous church totaled about $3.8 million, which includes mission and service grant, the National Indigenous IMG unit budget, and also other grants related to Indigenous church, such as the Healing Fund and Education grant. In addition, I want to mention there's also a dedicated financial reserve has been set up for Indigenous church, and the funding going to this reserve coming from the property sales across the country. Each region has their own property policy, and a portion of the property sales goes to this reserve, and the amount has been invested together with the General Council Office's treasure fund, and the fund has been growing very healthily in the last couple of years. The balance totaled about $6 million at the end of 2024.
Thanks, Harry, and I hope that answers a question that was raised. Moderator.
So thank you, General Secretary. Thank you, Harry, and thank you to Springwater and to Tony for all of the work that you do. You have another finish-up question or statement?
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I know that there's been a lot of questions in regards to the money that is from the property sales. So I just wanted to speak briefly to that. As Harry has named, there is a generous amount in there. Having said that, we have begun, as mentioned, we've completed 40 assessments of our properties. And what we have found is that, a rough estimate, we're looking at approximately $10 million in repairs. Currently, we have 22 communities that have ministry, and so we have, over 20 that that have gone without. I think about one of our communities in northern British Columbia. And the cost to repair that building, just to even, it's not safe. Nobody can go in. We're looking at $1.7 million. And so when you start to raise questions about, where's the money going? What's being used with the money? This is our reality. It's going to, the needs are great, they're profound, and it's way bigger than the money that's sitting in the account right now.
Thanks for that additional clarification, Springwater. And thank you from the court for your report on your work over the past triennium. Thank you. At this time, I'll invite Kit Lowen, member of General Council Executive and chair of our governance committee, to give the accountability report from General Council Executive.
There are a lot of leftover bits and pieces up here, so pardon me. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin just by recognizing with honor and respect all of the commissioners and guests who are here this afternoon. And also just to foreshadow the presentation, it was not my intention to restate what is in the written accountability report that you have already received, but rather to bring some color to how it is that the executive of the General Council exercises governance in the context of the structural change within the church. And I'd like to also tell a quick story and offer some words about an approach to governance that the executive has found to be quite helpful, and the genesis of some of the work that has been undertaken. So my name is Kit Lowen, and I reside in Saskatoon. See? Okay. Or is that better? Okay. My name is Kit Lowen. I reside in Saskatoon. My home is in the heart of land traditionally occupied by the Round Prairie Métis, as well as the people of Treaty 6 and the Lakota and Dakota people of Whitecap Dakota First Nation. I also use she, her pronouns. And it's my honor on behalf of the General Council Executive as chair of the Governance Committee to provide this presentation. And I'm also grateful that David Leighton Brown is here today, who is also a member of the Governance Committee. So I'm a lay member of the General Council Executive, and so I'm going to make reference to a biblical story. And I want to bring it to you in the spirit of the priesthood of all believers, which is a bit of a hangover from my many years hanging out with Anabaptists. So please forgive my clumsy exegesis. I have been led to Exodus in the past week, and in particular, I've been drawn to chapters 35 and 36, where Moses gathers the entire Israelite community and tells them that God has commanded them to do something spectacular, to build the tabernacle, the sanctuary. In chapter 35, Moses calls on Bezalel, who has been, and here I quote, filled with a divine spirit that will give him skill, ability, and knowledge for every kind of work, and who has the ability to teach others. And then later in chapter 35, Oholiab has also been called to bring his skills to the task of building the sanctuary. For me, chapter 36 is beautiful, where we read that Moses has called Bezalel, Oholiab, and every other skilled person whom God has given skill, ability, and knowledge for the work of building the sanctuary to do all that God has commanded. Every skilled person whom God has given skill, ability, and knowledge. Moses had a great vision given by God and a great dream of building that sanctuary, which was possible because every person who felt called by God and had every skill and ability and knowledge to make it happen. And the work of the governance is not literally about cutting gems, working with silver and gold, or carving wood, but it is about building something beautiful together, inspired by God. It's my observation that this room and that this church is rich with people who have been filled with the divine spirit and given specific skills, ability, and knowledge to bring about amazing things both in governance and in ministry. And for members of the executive, these beautiful creations emanate like dandelions from our call and vision, to which we dedicate faithful and relentless attention. In its role as one of the governing bodies of the United Church, the executive strives to live into this time of transition resulting from the structural changes. A quotation that is useful for me in this time of transition comes from a lesser-known master of organizational change, Shrek, who tells his good friend, "Change is good, donkey." But donkey, change is also hard. A somewhat less famous change expert, Cam Fraser, reminds us, and here he quotes the parking meters at the Regina Airport, change is possible. Change, good, hard, and possible. One way of framing the executive's governance work to bring about the good, to ease the hard, and to energize the possible can be thought of by work in 3 governance modes. The fiduciary mode is all about the work and care for the human and material resources and assets of the church. And for the executive, we attend to this work with attention to the lines of authority and to the lines of decision-making that have been set out by the church. Clearly, not all fiduciary responsibility rests with the executive. However, when we operate in this mode as governors, we have clarity about what is and what is not within our authority. And our attention then is primarily on oversight and management, with attention to our legal duties of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience, and to mitigating risk. Strategic work for the executive is focused on the development of major high-level goals, and we monitor progress related to those goals. In this mode, it is our job to clearly delegate responsibility for the work related to these goals to the General Secretary, who is then accountable for progress towards, accountable for those delegations. The governor's work in this particular mode is all about foresight and monitoring and oversight of the strategy. The third mode, the generative one, is one I'm inclined to think about as a combination of the reference William made yesterday to stirring the pot and Samantha's reference yesterday to working in a playful state. In this work, the executive uses both imagination and wisdom, thank you, Reverend Dr. Thompson, and to imagine and reimagine, to frame and reframe, to embrace those complex dilemmas and search for pathways that are faithful while we seek to minimize the downside of an issue and uplifting the potential. In this mode, insight is key. Anticipating risk and mitigating risk is also critical. And so, yes, donkey, change is hard, but change is good and possible. We've leaned into this time of transition with the support and mentorship from Reverend Dan Hotchkiss, whose expertise and experience in supporting robust governance in religious organizations has been profound. He has worked within some of the congregations and regions within this church. Dan's support and guidance has been a great gift to us in our understanding. And in his book, Governance and Ministry, he sets out these distinctions. Dan has helped us to see that our governance must involve a relentless, or to quote our friend Mitchell Anderson, a ruthless and relentless discipline and commitment to the call and vision of the church. We are compelled to clarify high-level goals, in the strategy and to delegate to the General Secretary and to exercise accountability for the attainment of those goals. Ministry, on the other hand, in Dan's view, refers to the daily work of building community and transforming lives in regions and in congregations. And so those are somewhat imperfect definitions, and certainly if you're a Venn diagram fan like me, you can tell that there would be a lot of intersection between them. As I conclude this presentation, I feel like it's critically important to give thanks and credit to the powerful guidance provided by the Workflow Task Group. I have to move my glasses to make sure it's down. Yes. The work that they have done and the insights that they have provided have propelled new understandings of governance in this time of transition. The report and recommendations of the Workflow Task Group were approved by the executive, and they form solid guidance for our work and for our education and development. We're really grateful to this group for their wisdom. You will see here that they have focused the executive works particularly in these 4 areas: in the purpose of governance to live out the call and vision, that high-level bird's eye view, to be visionary and strategic, to monitor risk, and to accompany the General Secretary in the work that is done by the staff, to seek ways to act with honor and to build trust, and finally, the great task within a complex organization like the United Church of Canada to find ways to decolonize the work that we do. The task group members who developed this work include Shirley Cleave, Mitchell Anderson, Bob Fillier, Trina Duncan, and Teresa Burnett-Cole. And I once again wish to thank them. Let Betzalel, Oholiab, and every other skilled person whom the Lord has given skill, ability, and knowledge for the work of building the sanctuary do all that the Lord has commanded. Every skilled person, you and we together can build this sanctuary. It's been a privilege to provide you with this information, and I would welcome you to bring questions or comments to me or to David on behalf of the Governance Committee. Change is good, change is hard, change is possible. Thank you.
Friends, it is time. Thank you, Kit, for your report and for representing so well the complexities of the work of the General Council Executive. It is time for us to switch gears, and so I'm going to invite the Way Forward Committee to begin presenting their work so that we can move into our first decision session. So we have Mitchell and Emily from the Way Forward Committee to begin presenting the work of the Way Forward Committee. I will also ask you to make sure that you are logged into Chime, because we will start needing movers and seconders, and then we will start voting on the proposals that they have made. So if you are a voting commissioner, please make sure that you are ready, because we are having our first decision-making session now.
Good afternoon, friends. Hello, welcome. My name is Mitchell. This is my friend and colleague, Emily. And we are 2 of the members of the Way Forward team, and we will be presenting you our proposals and recommendations this afternoon, and then you'll hear from other voices tomorrow. I believe the order has been determined by the Business Committee, and so we will proceed in the order that they have outlined. And so Emily and I are going to begin by introducing the recommendations. We're starting with GC45, Way Forward 11, TICIF 1, Vocations of the Whole People of God for Summer 2025. So if you want to find your way there in Chime, GC45, Way Forward 11, TICIF 1, Vocations of the Whole People of God for Summer 2025. And so I'm going to read for you the notes that we have. As they're only available in English, the live interpretation will assist those who will better understand those in French. Slow down. Thank you. Thank you, moderator. It's the first one. I'm just a little excited. I appreciate your wisdom and guidance as always, moderator. Most of the discussion groups affirmed the values and vision of the proposal, especially around inclusivity, collaboration, and recognizing diverse forms of ministry, and were supportive of approving the statement. Multiple groups raised a concern about clarifying what is meant by the ministry of lay people and a need to articulate those roles, for example, licensed lay worship leaders, sacraments elders, designated lay ministers, congregational designated ministers, among others. Paid lay ministry within the church is diverse and complex, and there are many already existing resources, handbooks, and statements on all of these forms of paid lay ministry. Some groups named a desire for more guidance for how supporting half-time or bi-vocational ministry will be implemented. Some participants raised concerns about who and what is missing from the proposal. Named specifically were rural communities of faith, the Indigenous church, and disability theology. Some groups expressed a need for concrete action and implementation and accountability.
Therefore, the Way Forward team proposes that in response to TICIF 01, Vocations of the Whole People of God, the 45th General Council 2025, A, approve the statement, Vocations of the Whole People of God, Ministries for Our Time. B, regarding the ministry of the whole people of God, affirm the priorities of communities of faith to 1, focus attention on nurturing and supporting people's lives of faith as the primary sphere of the church's ministry in the world. 2, bring the faith expressed in secular professions and vocations from the margins to the center of the community of faith, and direct the General Secretary to provide guidance and educational resources for implementation. And to be clear, the font in red is what has been added. C, regarding models of ministry inspired by divine interdependence, directs the General Secretary to give priority to 1, working from an image of the desired whole, not from a collection of individual communities of faith, and what was removed was the surviving parts. 2, calling and equipping people for cooperative models of ministry. 3, identifying the ways in which our current governance models inhibit collaboration to maximize cooperation, teaming, novelty, and creativity. And what was removed from the original was freeing governance at the local level. 4, focusing governance at the regional level on resourcing, support, and oversight. 5, focusing governance at the denominational level on enabling and safeguarding policy development, standards, and accountability. 6, developing an accessible forum for exchange of experience and resource sharing, providing a timeline and a concrete plan for implementation. D, regarding lay and ordered ministry within the church, direct the General Secretary to 1, clarify means of support for all roles of ministry, see appendix of report. 2, build mentorship into all roles in ministry. 3, clarify lines of accountability for all roles in ministry, see appendix. 4, ensure means of teaming for all roles in ministry. 5, ensure that the pathway to ordered ministry takes into account flexibility to maintain second profession/occupation. 6, a move to embrace more fully a model of ministry inspired by divine interdependence will require attention to certain principles and practices related to models of ministry. And 7, which was added, continue to articulate the various roles and diverse understanding of both paid and voluntary lay ministry, in brackets, including baptized, non-baptized, adherents, sacraments elders, licensed lay worship leaders, designated lay ministers, congregational designated ministers, among others.
Thank you to the Way Forward Committee. Commissioners, you have heard the discussions or the discernment of your discussion groups represented in the report and the proposal from the Way Forward Committee. Is there a mover and a seconder? If you can use the move and second function in Chime. Moved by Wilson Ganese and seconded by Fraser Williamson. Thank you. Is there any discussion to the motion that is before us, the proposal that is before us? If you could please request to speak to the floor and then move to a microphone. And for online commissioners, the process for you to speak to the floor is the same. You use the speak to the floor, and I will call your name in the order as presented by the equity team. Have any requests to speak? All right, then I will presume we are ready for the vote on this proposal. So we will use the vote function in the Chime app. Encore in the back, are we ready to move to a vote? All right, so I will ask you to open the vote. You will have 90 seconds. I think, did we say 90 seconds or 2 minutes? 2 minutes is on the screen. Let's go with that number. Just a reminder, if you have tech support issues, if you could raise your hand.
I did it. You want me to go back and do it again?
All right, the vote is now closed and the motion is carried. We are in a decision-making session, so we're not going to applause. We're not going to offer applause for any decision that we make. or I will use my gavel. My son is waiting for an opportunity for me to use this thing. And I did set myself up for that one. I did set myself up for that one. And we will give ourselves a round of applause when we complete all of our decision making at the conclusion of council for the great amount of work that we do. I want to recognize a point of order from Emma Simone. Microphone 2.
Hi, Emma Simone, Prairie to Pine Regional Council. I just noticed that we all had this very helpful thing on the table that suggested that when we're voting, we can adopt the original proposal, adopt the way forward proposal, refer the proposal for more research or study, or take no action on the proposal, but then the voting in chime is yes or no on the way forward proposal. So I just want some clarification as to what our options actually are in these decision-making sessions.
Thank you, Emma. I'm going to ask the court's indulgence and ask Charlene to come confer, and maybe Nicole as our general counsel to come confer with us about, and Kenji as business chair. You guys have a 2-minute chat break.
Yeah, that's a very reasonable question.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll introduce this one, and then you read the therefore.
Yeah.
All right, friends, it didn't even take 2 minutes. And I can see how it's confusing. Sometimes one-pager cheat sheets are, that can be misinterpreted. So the 4 actions that are listed on the little triangle note card on your table were the possible ways forward for the Way Forward Committee to present. Those are not our 4 options for voting. Those were the 4 actions that the Way Forward Committee could consider when they were discussing the notes. Is that clear? All right. I see point of personal privilege, Shane Goldie. If you could go to microphone 1, please.
Hello. I'm not sure if...
Or was that point of order? Sorry, it was both.
I pressed both. I'm not sure which one it'd fall under, but we saw that the cameras are moving around while the voting is going on. Is that okay if it goes across someone who is in the middle of voting and it shows the whole world?
That is a good question. I will put that to the equity team to decide and ask in the meantime that Encore keep the focus on us. In previous general councils, before we used electronic voting, we often voted on live stream with a raising of hands. And I realized that digital privacy is different, and so I will put a request for consideration to the equity team, and in the meantime, we'll suspend that practice. All right, I will invite Mitchell and Emily to propose the next proposal, to move the next proposal, to continue.
Okay, the next proposal that we are going to look at is GC45, Way Forward 06, PM05, salary continuance for General Counsel office staff, and PM06, denominational pay equity for summer 2025. So I hope you can have a moment to find that in the Way Forward list. GC45 WF06. Discussion groups were overwhelmingly in favor of both proposals, affirming in the 2 proposals a principle that there should be equitable treatment and alignment in the compensation practices between people employed as ministry personnel and people employed by regional councils and the General Council, including alignment in cost of living adjustments and other benefits and practices. Some participants named the challenges of resource constraints, both for communities of faith and for regional councils and the General Council, and encourage prudent implementation.
Therefore, the Way Forward team proposes that in response to PM05 salary continuance for General Council office staff and PM06 denominational pay equity, the 45th General Council 2025, 1, strongly affirm the principle of equity and alignment between the compensation practices for people employed as ministry personnel and people employed by regional councils and the General Council, and 2, refer PM05 salary continuance for General Council office staff and PM06 denominational pay equity and the discussion group notes to the General Council Executive for further analysis regarding implementation.
Thank you, Mitchell and Emily. Friends, we have the proposal from the Way Forward team, and so I call for a mover and seconder. I see Martha Lockwood and Lisa Falcons. So moved by Martha Lockwood, seconded by Lisa Falcons. The floor is now open for discussion. If you could use request to speak and then move to a microphone, I will call on Bob Fillier, microphone 2.
Mushitrom Madagatrice, je suis Bob Fillier, Pacific Mountain Regional Council, Tletlekeo. I would support the recommendation that's been brought forth from the Way Forward group. I would suggest an amendment, though. I worry when we have open-ended timelines that just say for further analysis regarding implementation. It isn't even worded towards implementation, but it's kind of like, let's do some more thinking and talking in typical United Church fashion, and if we decide we might want to implement it, then that would be great. So I would suggest a third point as a potentially friendly amendment that simply says, and to report back on the decision of implementation by the annual meeting of the General Council in 2026.
All right, so we have Bob Fillier moving an amendment to add a third point as a friendly amendment, so we won't get into wordsmithing it, about reporting back to the General Council at our annual meeting in 2026. And I see it seconded by Sarah Kerwin. So we will now move to discussing the amendment. Is anybody, Connell Campbell, I see you requested to speak. Is that to the original proposal or to the amendment? No, if it's not to the amendment, I can't recognize you speak. So you'll have to request again when I reopen the floor to the proposal, okay? Okay.
And please make your way to a mic. Part of the equity things is for us to be able to use the mic so everyone can hear.
Yeah, so even if I ask a clarifying question like, are you speaking to the motion or to the amendment? Are there any requests to speak to the amendment proposed by Bob Fillier? Seconded by Sarah Kerwin. All right, seeing none, we will now vote on the amendment. So if we can open the vote. And we're going to, almost everybody is voting within the first 60 seconds, so we're shortening the vote period time to 90 seconds. So if we can take the camera off of the floor, put the timer up for 90 seconds, and push the vote on the amendment.
So
All right. The voting is now closed and the amendment is carried. So now we'll return back to the substance of the amended proposal with the 3 points for action. Anybody wishing to speak to the proposal itself, can you please request to speak and move to a microphone now, or request to speak online? And tech team, I need to be able to see the speaker request list in front of me, please. All right, while I'm waiting, I have a point of order from Lee Sinclair. If you could please, you're at microphone 3.
Lee Sinclair, Northern Spirit Regional Council. Aware that this may not be technologically possible, visually on Chime, it looked like we were voting on the proposal. It didn't have the word amendment. So my understanding, my hope is that everyone in the room was keeping up, but it didn't have amendment.
Didn't on mine.
On some it did and some it didn't then. So just a note for next.
All right. I'm going to put my former director of operations hat on, and just based on some of the other check challenges in the room, I'm going to ask you all, when we have an amendment, if you can just refresh Chime so that you make sure when when an amendment is moved and seconded, if you refresh Chime, then hopefully the correct vote will come up. I have a point of privilege, Hilary Van Spronsen, microphone 3.
Hilary Van Spronsen, Chinook Winds. Just a quick question. In previous Worlds of General Council, we had an opportunity to see what percentage the vote was in favor or not. I'm wondering if that's possible going forward, so we have an over idea of how the court is voting.
It is not possible to do it. Bruno's rules do not allow it, so apparently previous general councils were out of order? That was a joke. I just gave our general secretary a heart attack. And our general counsel, SEL. All right, but it is also not possible in the method that we're using, but the reason is the legal procedures. All right, I have 2 requests to speak to the floor. I recognize Adrian Cormier, microphone 3.
Hi, Adrian Cormier, First on Eastern Edge. I think I know the answer, but I just want to be 100% clear. When it comes up to vote, if we vote in favor, that means not that we're in favor of immediately adopting the proposal. It means we're voting in favor to refer it, correct?
Can we put the proposal back up on the screen for a second? We're voting on the points that are listed in the document.
Perfect, all right. So vote in favor is a vote to refer. Thank you.
Yes. All right, I recognize Connell Campbell, microphone 1.
Hello, Connell Campbell, Chinook Winds Region. Before I ask my question, I'd like to say this question applies to a number of proposals, and I am wondering if such a question is permitted.
If you have questions about the process around proposals, can you come and talk to the business committee at table 56? Because what we're doing now when we request to speak to the floor, unless we're raising an issue about the order that we're doing our business in, then, which is the point of order, then it's what we should be discussing when we request to speak is the substance of the proposal. So if you have a question that relates to the process regarding several proposals, can you please come and address that to the business table at table 56?
I can do that, yes.
Thank you, Connell. They're raising their hands so you can see where they are over here where I'm pointing. All right. Now I have lost track of where I am. Oh, see, there's no more requests to speak to them. Okay, so we will move into a vote on the amended proposal. So the vote on the amended proposal GC45 WS06. I see Sarah Curran with a point of order. Microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. Sarah Kerwin, Pacific Mountain Regional Council. My point of order is that our youth forum member here must have the answer from the business committee before we vote, as I know what the question is, and it relates directly to the voting on this proposal.
So the technicality is that the speaker to the, Connell, is a youth forum delegate and not a commissioner. And so it will not be voting on the proposal. Sarah, I see you coming back to microphone 3. Okay, you're going to also talk to the business committee. So do I proceed? All right. So can we go to the mover and seconded? I'm just going to say that part. All right, so we're voting on GC45 WF06. It's moved by Martha Lockwood, seconded by Lisa Falcons. You have 90 seconds to vote starting now. All right, friends, the vote is completed and the motion has passed. I will turn again to the Way Forward team to move us to our next proposal.
Thank you, moderator. The next proposal is Way Forward 8, so that is GC45 WF08. GCE02, Total Compensation Review Proposals for Summer 2025, Way Forward 8. There was strong support for moving forward with this proposal. Participants acknowledged that the current processes and structure for ministry and personnel, M&P, and human resources processes are challenging and in many cases difficult to maintain. Some groups named concerns with 3, which some groups interpreted as an intent or directive to limit the creation of part-time positions. Groups affirmed that there are situations where part-time ministry is appropriate for both the community of faith and the ministry personnel. There was a lot of feedback on the need to review salary minimums given the data about the percentage of ministry personnel currently being paid above the minimum. This indicates strong interest in the recommendation to ensure that further study on minimum salary levels be undertaken. Some groups wanted that recommendation, number 7, to be more directive. On balance, the existing language of the proposal incorporated already addresses their concerns and provides for a possible implementation plan in this regard. While there was support for exploration of the feasibility and acceptance of a centralized payroll system, concerns were expressed about the effectiveness of a centralized payroll system and the potential financial and operational impacts of implementation. Groups affirmed recommendation 13 for continued pay equity analysis, also wanting to ensure that such analysis also incorporated the implications for ministry personnel employed in incorporated ministries and ecumenical shared ministries.
Therefore, the Way Forward team proposes that in response to GC45 total compensation review proposals, the 45th General Council 2025, 1, receive the report of the Total Compensation Task Group, 2, add to the manual section 1.2.1.1a the words fair, just, and equitable. 3, encourage regional councils to exercise oversight to seek to provide full-time equivalent employment opportunities wherever possible, rather than ministry personnel having to cobble together full-time equivalencies, recognizing that there are situations where part-time ministry is appropriate for both the community of faith and the ministry personnel. And what was removed from that section was limit creation of part-time positions so that the onus is on the church too. So that's been striked out. And that the 45th General Council 2025 direct the General Secretary to 4, recommend to the 2026 45th General Council annual meeting the elimination or revision of specific bylaws that confound/complicate cooperative and collaborative ministries employment. 5, annually provide regional councils with aggregate payroll data by regional cost of living groups to support them ensuring fair and equitable compensation terms at the time of appointment and call and ensuring compliance with minimum salary standards. 6, apply regional cost of living compensation differentials to communities of faith, providing amounts to ministry personnel. 7, undertake further study into relative parity of United Church minimum salaries with the minimums of Presbyterian, Evangelical, Lutheran, and Anglican churches and a possible implementation plan. 8, work with the leadership and wisdom of the National Indigenous Council to develop a compensation model and funding for that model that is relevant to remote Indigenous communities of faith. 9, explore with the Indigenous leadership additional resources and supports for ministry personnel serving Indigenous communities of faith, specific to the context of remote Indigenous ministries. 10, annually adjust minimum salaries by the Annualized Consumer Price Index, or CPI, if 3% or less. When the CPI exceeds 3%, staff gather data on wage predictions, collective agreements in not-for-profit and social service sectors, adjustments being offered by other denominations to support the executive of the General Council, considering issues of affordability to set an adjustment. 11, work with the Indigenous Church as it discerns more appropriate compensation models and commit to removing any policy barriers to nimbleness in funding. 12, explore the feasibility and acceptance of centralizing payroll administration to relieve communities of faith of this complex burden, recognizing that treasurers would still have to be the source of employment and payroll data for the payroll administrators. 13, expand the base of participation in the Leadership Court's equity study so that equity can be evaluated more thoroughly. And that the 45th General Council 2025 forward the notes from the discussion groups to the General Secretary and General Council office staff to review and incorporate General Council feedback as appropriate as part of the implementation plans.
Thank you, Emily and Mitchell. I need a mover and a seconder, and I have multiple of both already. So it's moved by Bill Jones and seconded by Steve Loudon. Friends, I'm going to ask you not to hit the move and second until the Way Forward team has finished doing the proposal, and I call for a mover and seconder, both for equity reasons and because it messes with my monitor. I did catch them this time, but please wait until I invite you to move and second before you press those buttons on chime. We are now opening for discussion. I see a request from Liz McKenzie. If you can make your way to microphone 3, it looks like you are closest to. And a reminder to anyone online, you may also request to speak to the floor.
Thank you, moderator. Liz McKenzie, Shining Waters Regional Council, Commissioner to this General Council. In light of the fourth paragraph in the preamble that states there was a lot of feedback on the need to review salary minimums, etc., I would like to propose an amendment to number 7 in the Way Forward proposal. And I am proposing, if I can get my computer to work, that 7 says instead, undertake further study of salary minimums, which includes, but it is not limited to, studying relative parity of United Church minimum salaries with the minimums of Presbyterian, Evangelical Lutheran, and Anglican churches, with a recommendation for a possible implementation plan for revised salary minimums.
Liz, while we're waiting to see if there are other speakers, can you please run back to the back corner to the tech team and show them the wording of that for them to put up on the screen for everybody? Thank you. All right. So the amendment is moved by Liz. If anybody caught that and feels moved to second it, before we see the text, you're welcome to second it now, and we won't call for a vote until the amended text is on the screen for everybody, and I will repeat it. So it's seconded by Fraser Williamson. So we'll just wait for the amendment to show up on the screen. Can I get a thumbs up when the amendment is complete from the tech team? All right, so the amendment is moved by Liz McKenzie, seconded by Fraser Williamson. And the amendment reads for point 7, undertake further study of salary minimums, which includes but is not limited to studying relative parity of United Church minimum salaries with the minimums of Presbyterian, Evangelical Lutheran, and Anglican churches, with a recommendation for a possible implementation plan for revised salary minimums. So friends, that is the amendment before us. Does anybody want to speak to the amendment? Not the full proposal, but just the amendment. There have been no requests to speak to the floor. So I will ask for you to hit refresh on your Chime platform so we make sure that it shows that you're voting on the amendment. And we will open the vote on the amendment on Chime now. You have 90 seconds. Ross Carson, I see a request to speak to the floor. Is that to the proposal or did I miss you? Can you go to a mic to answer? Microphone 3.
Moderator, I'm just a little confused about the content of the amendment and how it varies with the proposal itself on Article 7. Perhaps Liz could explain it a bit more.
Okay. That we've already opened the vote. And so I will ask Encore to close it because there is sometimes the delay. So if we can abort this vote, there's sometimes a delay with Chime, as you know, in getting the information up onto my screen. And so I'm going to say that I opened the vote before I recognize the speaker. So Liz, you have heard the question from Ross Carson. If you could come back to microphone 3 and just explain the intent of the amendment now that we have the wording.
Thank you, moderator. The intent is to underline that the review of the salary minimums isn't just a review that relates to parity with those other denominations, but it includes wider factors that may come into play to looking at revising the salary minimums.
Ross, does that answer your question? Can you go to the microphone to answer?
Liz, just mentioning the other factors isn't quite specific enough for my support for your amendment. Liz, I need to know a bit more.
Liz, microphone 3.
Well, one of the things we don't know is who those 15% of ministry personnel are who are not negotiating above the minimum salary and why that's happening. We know that the average from the work that the compensation task group did in their report, the average negotiations are 10 to 15% above minimum. 85% of ministry personnel are negotiating above minimum, and simply looking at what other denominations are doing doesn't get at the robust examination and review of whether our minimum salary, as it is stated now, is adequate or whether it in fact needs to be adjusted upwards. So ministry personnel don't always have to be negotiating above. Like if the minimum is not truly adequate, fair, equitable, those are broader factors than just looking at what other denominations are doing. Ross, I hope that helps. I can't state every single particular factor that might need to be looked at, but I know that there are bigger factors than just looking at parity with other denominations.
I have a point of order from Bridget Maya Douglas. Could you go to microphone 3, please?
Yes, thank you, moderator. I'm Bridget Maya from Shining Waters. We just noticed at table 49 that the people who are using their phone to vote, it doesn't say amendment, but if you're using an iPad and possibly a laptop, it does say amendment with the vote. And so that might be the confusion.
Thank you, Bridget Maya. Do we have, Cheryl Ann, since you're connected to the tech team, is that something that can be resolved? All right, the news from the tech table is that they are trying to figure that out right now, if that's something that is specific to using a mobile phone versus an iPad or a computer. So we will try and resolve that if we can. So although the technology might say you're voting on an amendment or you're just voting, I'm going to make it really clear verbally, which is recorded for posterity, that we are voting on the amendment. And Jane McDonald, I see you at microphone 4. Are you requesting to speak to the amendment, yes or no?
I guess so.
Super.
It's a yes.
Jane McDonald, Commissioner, Region Bermuda, Nova Scotia, Chair of the Task Group on Compensation. We had a lot of discussion on what this portion of the proposal meant, and there is a deep amount of research that needs to be done on the minimums in the Presbyterian, Evangelical, Lutheran, and Anglican churches to discern the parity. So there's a lot of factors that will be taken into account when that work is done, if this proposal passes. So I'm not sure that I believe that the amendment is necessary.
All right. I see a request to speak to the floor from Monica Rossborough. Can you please move to microphone 3? I see you going. Oh, I lied. Microphone 1.
Monica Roseborough, Commissioner from Northern Spirit Region. I just wanted to address one of the comments about why is it 15% of the clergy do not negotiate. I'm one of those 15%. I live in one of the poorest regions. I live in one of the poorest communities that lost something like 25% of the population during COVID. They moved away for better jobs. It's nobody's business but mine why I don't renegotiate. But between you, me, and the four walls privately, I like living in my small town. I like working there. I earn way more than minimum wage. I am very privileged. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Monica. I see, yeah, they self-regulated about the clapping. They stopped themselves. They're fantastic. Liz McKenzie, I see a request to speak to the floor, and then I see no more requests to speak to the floor, and we'll move back to voting on the amendment.
Moderator, if I may intervene just before Liz speak, with a reminder to the court that conversations need to be addressed to the moderator and not to fellow commissioners. I know, Ross, you were trying to figure out things, so questions need to be addressed to the moderator and not to each other.
Thank you, General Secretary. Liz McKenzie, microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. I appreciate the chance to address the last 2 speakers for my understanding and for why I put this amendment forward. I am not speaking about personal decisions in negotiation. I am speaking about the systemic issue of whether in fact the current minimums are a fair minimum, as we put fair, equitable, etc. in, and we need to study that. One of the factors that is beyond looking at relative parity and what the other denominations have looked at in determining their minimums is that pay inequities is the systemic discrimination that keeps on giving, as I say, because it doesn't just affect your salary now, it affects your pension in the future. So if there is a problem with our system in terms of ensuring that all ministry personnel are being paid fairly and equitably, that's something we need to look into, and one of the factors is the salary minimum. So I don't want to just restrict it to looking at other denominations. I want to look at what's happening in our own denomination with the disparity, differences, whatever you want to call it, in what's already happening.
Thank you, Liz, for that further clarification. All right, seeing no more requests to speak to the floor, I will now move us back into a vote on the amendment. To be clear, we are voting on the amendment to point 7, undertake further study of salary minimums, which includes but is not limited to studying relative parity of United Church minimum salaries with the minimums of Presbyterian, Evangelical Lutheran, and Anglican churches, with a recommendation for a possible implementation plan for revised salary minimums, moved by Liz McKenzie and seconded by Fraser Williamson. I will ask Encore to push the vote to the amendment now, and you have 90 seconds to vote. All right, friends. The vote is now closed, and the motion to amend the proposal is carried. So we will now move back into, is there any further discussion on the substance of the full way forward proposal? If you have any discussion on the way forward proposal, whether you're online, if you could speak to the floor, request to speak to the floor, and if you're in the room, if you could request to speak to the floor and move to the microphone. All right, I see no request to speak to the floor, so we will now move to voting on the entire proposal as worded. So the proposal, as amended, is moved by Bill Jones, seconded by Steve Loudon. And we will open the vote on this proposal now. You have 90 seconds to vote. Friends, while we're waiting for the last 30 seconds before this vote to close, I will just say that the tech team has suggested there may be a challenge if somebody is voting on their phone and they have it in landscape mode instead of portrait mode. But they're also working to see if they can change the actual code to make sure that that problem is addressed. So thank you to Bridget Maya for raising that as a point of order, and we'll work on it over supper. All right, the vote is closed, and the motion to approve the proposal as stated is carried. Friends, I will say thank you to the Way Forward Committee for this first part of our work. We will continue decision-making in the next decision-making session, but at this time, I will ask Taylor, as Chair of Planning, to come and make announcements.
Thank you, moderator. On behalf of the entire planning team, I wish to extend gratitude to Etienne Marcoux and Stéphane Vermette for their tremendous effort in translating documents for us at very short notice for the business work. Merci, Etienne et Stéphane. I have the results of the silent auction of our bear and our bison. We have raised $800 for the Mission and Service Fund. Ryan McNally, you're taking home the grizzly bear. Sherry Hansen will receive the bison. Rhonda, can I entrust that to you? Thank you. If you would like to, or saying something? No. Yes, take them home after the meeting. Well, please wait until we have concluded the meeting. Yes, good point, Cheryl-Ann. If you would like to take home a copy of Then Let Us Sing, which you might find on your tables, a donation to the ongoing work of Then Let Us Sing, you may take it home. Donating to TELUS at thenletassing.ca/donate. And then commit to singing and sharing with the work of Then Let Us Sing in your communities of faith. I have a lost item. If this bag belongs to you, it has a kitty cat on it. You can come grab it for me. If you don't get me in time, I'll leave it on the information desk out in the lobby. But prior to, may I have your attention, please? Prior to going to supper, there's requests for photos from commissioners from Eastern Ontario Outaouais Regional Council. If you can meet at your banner, which is over there, just prior to getting your supper, and also for the commissioners from Canadian Shield and Shining Water Regional Councils, could you go to your banners for a photo before lunch? And then when you do get your lunch, the members of both of those regional councils, Canadian Shield and Shining Waters, are invited to have their supper in the McLeod E4 room down the hall. Living Skies commissioners are invited to have supper in McLeod E3. And Bermuda, Nova Scotia Regional Council members are invited to find each other on the west side of the room and have supper together there. I wish to offer birthday wishes to a member of the court. Kupa Moniqua is one of the youth leadership animators. Happy birthday. And I want to take the opportunity to also say I misspoke yesterday during the roll call. I said 74 youth members are with us here. We have 94 youth with us, actually. And so thank you, Koopa, for your work in being one of the animators that has organized all this, and happy birthday. Perhaps you've noticed, we have been late for almost every meal that we have had. I wish to offer thanks to the flexibility of the TELUS Convention Center staff. As you go and receive your meal today, I would like you to also please extend your thanks to them for their flexibility with us as well. This evening we are having a special dinner. It is at my demand. One of the luxuries I could take as chair of the planning committee. If people were coming to Alberta, they were going to have some Alberta beef. 100 kilometers south of Calgary is the hamlet of Granham, Alberta. That is the pastoral charge of my spouse, Mian Kim, who's sitting over there. The chair of the board of Granham United Church is Cecily Fleming, who is also the director of the Alberta Beef Producers. I'm sure she would like me to share this small note with you. Raising cattle is critical to the ecosystem of prairie grasslands in the prairies with the loss of the bison. Ranchers uphold the traditional Albertan livelihoods while also innovating for the 21st century. One example of this has been the introduction of the use of seaweed in feed, which significantly reduces the methane and carbon impact of the beef industry. We hope that all of you will please enjoy this meal of Alberta beef, an expression of our Albertan hospitality with a Sunday roast. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Taylor. And at this point, I would like to invite the children and young teens to come and lead us in grace before we break for our meal.
Sorry, please stand by. Okay, we got everybody onto the stage. Amazing. We are the children and the young teens at General Council 45 this year. Oh, thank you. We have been doing a lot of fun stuff in the past few days. We had a zoo trip. We just came back from the National Music Center where we had a whole bunch of workshops about playing music, and we did a sound storm with some drums. And today we have the pleasure of teaching you a grace. And so we are going to do it once as a group, and then we invite all of you to stand, and we'll do it all together. Okay, ready, guys? The bear thanks the earth for the mountains. The fish thanks the earth for the sea, and we thank God for the goodness of what we're about to receive, Okay, now everybody up, if you are able. And then kids, we can look at Robin in the front for the actions as well. Okay, ready? The bear thanks the earth for the mountains. The fish thanks the earth for the sea, and we thank God for the goodness of what we're about to receive, Amen. Good job, guys.
Thank you to our children and young teens.
Follow Nick.
So we will, as always, invite our children and elders to go first for dinner, and we are adjourned until 7 p.m.